10 years is a long time in public memory. It's easy to forget. It's very easy to move on. But there is one girl whose memory comes alive every time a woman in this country is raped, molested, harassed, teased, or attacked. She's the reason that 10 years ago galvanized lakhs of men and women to hit the streets and brave police lathis and water cannons in that very cold December month. She is the one because of whom we have a stronger and more nuanced anti-rape law. Nirbhaya was a watershed moment that focused India's national conversation on an issue that was often left in the shadows: violence against women. 10 years on, are the streets of India and homes of India safer for women? I think we all know the answer to that question. Are fast-track courts really all that fast? Is there better evidence gathering? Is the criminal justice system more responsive? Over the next 30 minutes, I'm asking 4 women, all members of parliament, to look back to that day, 16th of December 2012, and what changed and didn't change that day. Sushmita Dev is a TMC MP. She's joining us on the broadcast. Ami Yajnik is a Congress MP with us on the show. Sonal Mansingh, again an MP. Thank you very much. And Dr. Kanimoi is an MP from the DMK. Sushmita, I'm coming to you. I want to know from you where you were on 16th of December, 10 years ago, and what was your reaction to what had happened? The details were gruesome. No one had anticipated the sort of public outrage that would eventually follow. But what was your first reaction? And did you think this was a watershed moment that would change everything?
You see, we are talking in hindsight now. And at that moment, it was a horrific affair. People were on the streets. The nation was up in arms because of the nature of the rape and how badly the victim was mutilated. And I think the entire country, irrespective of which party they are in, were praying. And I was sharing the same thoughts and the same feelings then. But the question is, in the next 10 years, despite the outrage that we saw 10 years back, we still have to ask ourselves what has changed. But 10 years back, whatever happened, I'm sure that it's happened before, but I want to be sure. I'm still not sure that it will not happen again. I think that's what we need to discuss today.
Why are you so sure? I mean, for all of us, I remember I was Sushmita that day. Actually, in the protest that followed at India Gate, we were all there reporting. I was a younger reporter then. There was police lathi charge, there were water cannons, and yet you could not stop these men and women from pouring into India Gate. And when you looked at those pictures, and those pictures were beamed across the country, the feeling was, this is the moment where everything changes. This is the moment from here on, women on the streets of the country will be safe. That hasn't happened. In fact, Nirbhaya's own mother says it. She says, after what happened with my daughter, after all the public support, after the fact that laws were changed, here we were thinking that no other girl in this country would have to go through what my daughter did, but I'm afraid we failed. Did that moment mean nothing, Sushmita?
No, that moment actually catapulted into one of the most thorough reports ever written on women's security and how to reform the laws, which was the Verma Committee report. But what is unfortunate is, despite that comprehensive report, we've not been able to implement all of it. It's easy to amend the law in the parliament, but the rest of the recommendations have still not been implemented. And I think what it takes to change or to ensure that this doesn't happen, and even if it happens, it's a very rare case, because I don't think it's absolutely impossible to ensure that it never happens, because women's safety is a challenge across the globe. It's not just in India. So I think what we need to do is look outside just the criminal justice system and the criminal laws. There's lots to be done in society, in the education system, in the way children are brought up, in the way we sensitize them. So it's a much larger fight. But one does need to look back at the Verma Committee report and maybe, table an action taken report. That's the need of the day. That's what I think.
It's a larger battle. I agree with you there. But Dr. Kanimoi, do you think we have partially succeeded? I know there are cases like the Chawla rape case that came up, and it was in the headlines recently, so I'm talking about it. The fact that, the same year as Nirbhaya happens, there is another young girl, a 19-year-old, who's kidnapped by 3 men, raped over a period of 3 days. Her body is brutalized, and then they leave it in a farm. The men are convicted. A high court, the Delhi High Court, says they need to hang. A death penalty is handed out to them. But in the Supreme Court, that decision is overturned because the Supreme Court says there is not enough evidence. The fact is that, the policing was so bad, the evidence collection was so bad that we cannot let these men hang.
See, looking back at 10 years and what we are now, I don't think we have changed much. What has happened 10 years back, you think right now it is not happening in India or any part of the world, it is still happening. It's just not come in front of our eyes. Still people are just getting away with all this crimes which has been easily done then and there. As you must be aware of the statistics, every 20 minutes Indian women is getting raped. It is now, even Shushmita has mentioned that depending upon the rules and the laws are there. Are they really in action is the question of the hour. There is enough of laws, enough of amendments, enough of legislations which is all there for the women. Is it really being used is the question back which I would like to ask all over the nation. Nothing has been used. It's a one-day talk. Let's take even Nirbhaya's case. That year, we all had a very heavy heart. We were shedding tears, which actually was happened in our own family. We were all sorry cutting figure. As 10 years passed by, today we are just sitting and talking over it. Do you think after that instances like that has not happened? Still, you have been reporting it. So where do we really stand? What needs to be done for the hour? It is not just framing the rules, but we have to really take the action.
Sonal Mansingh, would you want to come in here? You are largely a Delhi resident, and much of the anger and the outpouring that we saw was in the national capital. We all saw what happened at India Gate during that cold December month. When you look back these 10 years, was it reasonable for us to expect that in a country as large as India, one incident, one watershed moment, a law becoming more nuanced and stricter would make the country safer for women, would make the streets of this country and the homes of this country safer for women? Was it even reasonable for us to expect it?
For any civilized country, society, it is reasonable to expect, despite the volume of people and the vast landscape of a complex society as India. I want to divert a little bit into the point that you made right at the beginning. How do we sensitize? One part is, of course, the law. Whether they are fast-track courts or they've become soft-track courts, I don't know. I want to harp on the point of education. Not only academic education, but the way society looks at things through our television, news, the serials, the films, the WhatsApp messages, that is largely the social media. I think the time has changed so much that, even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, all this didn't influence. These have become the great influencers. And I know from my own experience of my dancers how their mindsets keep changing. I have to bring them back on track. I'm very, very strict with girls and boys equally, my students and wherever I can influence, I can talk, I can give interview, I can share. So I think sensitizing is a very big word. How does one sensitize? If the parents have no control over their children today, what they are looking at, you know, the mobile, the laptop, and these young minds, you know, like the live-in relationship has become now a very big word. Now in live-in relationship also so many things are happening. My one point, the bottom line for me is that there have to be parallel tracks. It's not just the law, not just the policing, but society as a whole, in totality. The home, the parents, the school, the education, the entertainment, the social media, I mean, you name it. And from where these influences come, they pour in and they take hold of the minds. I mean, young boys of 10 and 11 and 9 are raping younger girls. It's unimaginable, akalpaniya. And the brutality, the Nirbhaya Kand brought out as I think not before, never before, the amanushiya brutality, unthinkable. But now, so many cases are happening in so many ways. I mean, chopping up and live-in relationships and stuffing them in refrigerators and whatnot.
Shraddha Walkar is the case you're
in a
talking
way,
about.
as you said, watershed. Yes.
Shraddha Walkar case is the one that you're talking about. Dr.
Sorry?
Ami Yajnik, even if you just look at the Shraddha Walkar case,
Yeah,
because
there are
that
many
is the one
Shraddhas.
that's fresh in everyone's
There are many
mind right
Shraddhas.
now.
What I'm saying is that...
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, and that is the worry.
I just want to make one quick point also here.
But my point,
no,
Dr. Ami, is...
Just one second. One second. Please, before you go to Ami or anyone, my friends, just one point. That what I heard later, and the story came out, but then it was sort of got... Nirbhaya's boyfriend told her, let's not get into this bus because it's all dark and there's no one inside. To take one look and get out. She said, no, that's even better. This is something that I heard later, where the boyfriend's friend had come out with that aspect, which people don't know about. So I'm only saying that both boys and girls have to be sensitized, have to be alerted, and not get into this rigmarole and the big words of living and this and that and freedom of expression in thought and behavior. I really think it's time. Strictness comes into being. I don't say morality, but as a strict standards of behavior, of etiquette, of mindset, of attitudes.
Okay. Sushmita, is that the solution? To be stricter, not to be in live-ins? That's hardly a solution. I mean, not to my mind at least.
Solution is... You see, I don't say solution is... Solution word is inapt. Is inapt. Solution is not found like that. It's a whole process. It has to be a process.
Okay. That question was for Sushmita. I was wondering if she wants to weigh in on what you're saying.
You see, I'll tell you something. Rape is not about sex. Rape is about a power play. It's a man telling a woman that I'm stronger than you. I can exploit you in the way I want to. It's a power play. If you read deeper into the psychology and mentality of a rapist. So if it's a mind game, it's how you condition our children at a formative year. And you need to condition men and boys. So today, I will give you a suggestion. For instance, you are going to do a series of these talks on women's safety. You should get 4 men to come on your show and tell you what should be done to prevent rape. Because remember, all the laws that we passed in the parliament after Nirbhaya, they are all what we are going to do after somebody is raped. We are going to convict him. These are going to be the laws of evidence. This will amount to rape. This will not amount to rape. Penetration will amount to rape. This is everything that will come into play after the damage is done. So what I think is that to stop people from thinking that you can rape someone and get away with it, and that the mindset that tells a man to rape a woman is what we have to work at together as a society. And I think I'm again saying the education system plays a very important role, and how you sensitize the men in our society plays a very important role if you're talking about crimes.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Yajnik, uh, not just did Nirbhaya give us a stronger, more nuanced anti-rape law, also a broader understanding of what constitutes sexual harassment, what constitutes rape, etc. What it also gave us was a Nirbhaya fund. As of today, I'm basing my statistic on what the government has told Parliament. Almost half of the Nirbhaya fund lies unused. Funds that can be used to do multiple things. Funds that can be used to put up, lights in places that require light. Funds that can be used to make public spaces more gender neutral, which can make streets safer for women. All that fund is lying underutilized. Does that give you a sense of the government's priority? Yes, when something, when something like a Shraddha Walkar happens, it's in the headlines, newspapers are talking about it, television channels are talking about it, so the government may just step in and say a couple of things. After that, everyone forgets. That is what the underutilization of the Nirbhaya fund is showing us. That is what, vehicles gotten under the Nirbhaya funds being used by netas is showing us. That you simply don't care because this is simply not a priority.
The Nirbhaya fund not getting utilized is a very sorry state of affairs on the part of the government. This has been raised even by me a few years back, when the funds that were sent from the union government to the state of Gujarat had lapsed completely and not utilized at all. Now, this fund was created at that time specially to see that security is given to rape victims, they are being supported, there should be PCR vans, there should be lighting on the roads, there should be training at every level, that is at the district level, at the state level. You should have people visiting the homes of the rape victims, you should have data, and they should be provided for financially. So all this is enumerated as far as the objectives of the Nirbhaya fund and is concerned, and it is given to all the states. Despite the statistical data that the rape percentage has gone up, if you look at the NFHS 5 data, it is horrifying to see that 30% of women between 15 and 49 face violence at some point of time or the other. Now, if after the Nirbhaya, the laws have changed, there is more burden on the police agencies, on the government, on the social setup which has to be brought in order to see that women don't face violence within public spaces as well as in domestic spheres. Nothing is happening.
But the fact is that women day in and day out are let down by India's criminal justice system. And I'm going to cite two examples here, Dr. Kanimoi. First, the case that came in from Delhi, where a young 17-year-old has to face an acid attack. Point is that in this country, the Supreme Court guidelines are very clear that the sale of acid over the counter is regulated. You can't simply walk into a shop and procure it. But these two men did procure it, and rather easily via Flipkart. Was no one thinking about it? There are Supreme Court guidelines that are in place, and yet no one bothers. I mean, I could go into a shop today easily at this point of time and buy the acid of my choice, and there is no one to stop me. So there is a failure there. There is a failure even when it comes to Shraddha Walkar. She had actually gone to the Vasai police station, Dr. Kanimoi, to register a complaint against Aftab to say he abuses me, he beats me up, he threatens to cut me up into pieces. What does the police do? The police does nothing. And when the police is asked, why did you do nothing after she has been murdered and chopped up into pieces, they say, oh well, she withdrew her complaint.
Yeah, Shreya. See, this is how it actually goes. The control, who has the control and where it starts and how it is going to be implemented. These are the three things which has to be done. Point number one, first of all, sensitizing, as everybody has spoken. It has to come from the birth. A mother gives a birth to a male child. At that moment, she has a bigger responsibility of developing a clean and neat citizen for her own country. She fails in that. Okay, there is always as gender indifference in all the homes, and whether it is across the country from Jammu and Kashmir to Kanyakumari, it is there. From the growth pattern itself, we change. Next, there is nothing called as sex education in the schools, which we are still lacking. Teaching them what is right and what is wrong at the level of the school, which gets incriminated into the mind and makes them do lesser mistakes as they grow up. We are still way behind that in the sex education, which needs to come up to in the school levels. Leave alone in the schools, even when a girl is born in the family, how she is being taught of living in the society by her own elder citizens, in the women citizens in her own family, like how she has to behave, what she has to do, what is the reality, how she has to safeguard herself, what is sex, how it has to be taken care. All these things, a mother herself feels ashamed to talk to her own daughter. We are living in that kind of a scenario even now after so many years of independence has crossed us. Today we are talking of all the other things, all the IT high-tech things and everything, but a normal girl child is still suffering even in her own marital life. Having sex against the wish of a wife is also a sex harassment, and that is also called as rape, which none of the women in many parts of the India till now has not realized that. So I think educating them at the level of the school is very important. Once upon a time, we had something called as sati in India. When a husband dies, the wife has to die immediately. Over the period of decades, haven't we crossed it and come up? We hardly hear of such kind of incidents in India. How can this can take place? There were also a sati rule. But how is it? It is just not by the rule. It is by the people. All the women stood up for themselves and they said, we would live up to the ideals of our husbands and ideas of the husband to at least take it forward. That should be the mind cultivating in every woman. And I think as women, we all have a responsibility of grooming every child which we bore in this land.
Okay, before I end this conversation, Sonal Mansingh ji, I have a feeling that every 16th of December, all of us talk about the same thing, about what has changed, what has not changed. But tell me one thing that you would want to see changed by 16th December 2023.
That one thing would be that when we say society, it's just a very big word. It comprises of every level and every strata of society, of people. And we talk all the time of government, but I think society, we as people, have become very insensitive. We should come together. There should be links, forged between people, between groups, who come to immediate assistance. There you need emotional, financial, and legal support system. We don't have that. Everyone is for oneself, So I think as a society, we need to be sensitized. We need to create bonds between ourselves, of people, of friends, of neighbors, of family, of associates in office, whether in office or whether at workplace or in your home, whatever. Society, I think, needs to come together and support government, support the steps and the laws that are being formed. Because unless, people are with the government alone cannot do it. And government is by the people, for the people, of the people, etc., etc. So I think this, division, this is government, this is society. I think we need to gel together, we need to come together, and we need to work as one.
Okay. Dr. Sonal Mansingh, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to thank Dr. Yajnik as well for being on the show. Dr. Kanimui, thank you very much. And Sushmita Dev, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.